What happens to illegal immigrants in Canada? Welcome to Wake Up Canada News. I'm Brad Wilder. Well, we give them food, we give them money, jobs, healthcare, schooling, and complete assistance. Okay, we're done here. It's not that simple, but it is lucrative on our Canadian tax dollar. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people from all parts of the world enter Canada illegally, and they come in search of a better life and to be part of a system that works. Now, most of them are refugees or asylum seekers, they like to call them, who are fleeing persecution, conflict, or human rights violations in their own home countries. While some are people who do not want to go through the legal means of entering Canada because, well, they fear their visas may not be approved for reasons, well, best known to them. Others, they enter Canada illegally because they cannot afford to, well, fund their travel to Canada if they follow the right route. While most of these people are eventually caught and deported, a large number do make it into the country and manage to stay under the radar. Between January of 2017 and March 2018, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police reported having intercepted over 25,645 people crossing the border into Canada illegally. While some end up being intercepted, the majority successfully enter Canada under the pretense to be legal residents. Public Safety Canada estimated that out of the over 25,000 who illegally came into Canada between 2017 and 18, only just over 1,000 were successfully removed from Canada. The big question is, what happened to the rest? What does Canada do with illegal immigrants in the country? This article is going to explore Canadian immigration rules, what happens to illegal immigrants in Canada, and the measures the country is taking to prevent citizens of other nations from illegally entering Canada. We'll look at, well, what the country is doing right and what it's doing wrong. An illegal immigrant in Canada is someone who is living in Canada without proper documentation, or who has entered the country without following the proper immigration procedures. It can also be someone who has stayed in the country after their authorization to stay in Canada has expired. They're not only those who come to Canada without permission or proper documentation from the Canadian government, they're also those who, well, authorization has expired, but instead of leaving the country, they managed to stay in the country while their stay remained unknown to the immigration authorities. Illegal immigrants come to Canada through various means. Some people may come by land, sea, or air without proper documentation or authorization. Some come through legal means, such as by visiting us on a tourist visa and then staying after their visa expires. They enter the country legally, but then overstay their visa or work permit. Now, generally, you can find illegal immigrants in every part of Canada's ports of entry. Illegal immigrants who come to Canada by land are usually called irregular border crossers. A bulk of these people are constantly caught, while a good number of them make it into Canada without being noticed. People who come to Canada by air are called inadmissible airline passengers. They're usually allowed to stay in Canada until their hearing date. While those who come to Canada as students or workers without proper paperwork are called undocumented immigrants. They're usually allowed to stay in Canada as well until their hearing date. While others may claim refuge status after arriving in Canada just to ensure they stay in the country, whatever the means of entry, it's important to remember that illegal immigration is a serious crime in Canada. People who come to Canada illegally are not following the proper procedures and are putting themselves at risk. How easy is it to cross the Canadian border illegally? Well, it's not that easy. The Canadian border illegally crossing it, well, without being detected is a tough thing. It's a big border. The Canadian border is long and difficult, but somehow, in between these difficult long attempts, it's possible to cross the border illegally, but it's not easy. There are a lot of risks involved, and it's not something anyone should try unless you're ready for the worst. While we have a staggering number of people who have successfully crossed a larger percentage of this number lose their lives before they see the end of the border. Canada's illegal border crossing statistics before system modifications that enabled the Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada to collect data on irregular border crossers in February of 2017, the IRB was unable to collect data on irregular border crossers. Between February to March 2017 to April and June to the 22nd, the Refugee Protection Division received over 67,805 claims made by irregular border crossers, out of which 28,332 were accepted, 19,646 were rejected, and 1,117 were abandoned. July to September 2017 saw the highest intake of claims, with over 8,558 claims received, while July to September of 2020 saw the least intake of claims, with just over 128 received. The Refugee Protection Division's decisions to accept or deny requests for refugee protection are appealed to the Refugee Appeal Division of the IRB. The Refugee Appeal Division can be asked to review a claim's rejection by the RPD to determine whether the RPD was an error. From April to June 2017 and April to June 2022, the Refugee Appeal Division of the IRB received over 16,564 appeals, with just over 1,222 allowed. The number of illegal immigrants in Canada, that number, is somewhere estimated to be between 20,000 to 500,000 people based on the data from the 2016 census. Now, January through April of 2025 saw over 800,000. Now, this represents a small fraction of the overall immigrant population in Canada, which is close to 6 million. The number is still greatly contested, as many reports show that there are likely more numbers than currently reported. That's because more people who enter the country without proper documentation or overstay their visas are yet to be caught or even counted. So what is life like as an illegal immigrant in Canada? Well, I got to tell you, it's difficult and dangerous, as you're constantly living in fear of being caught and even deported. You can't get a job, you can't get access to basic services or government benefits, which makes it hard to get by. Unless your family owns a business and, they're not going to tell anybody and pay you under the table. Many illegal immigrants end up working cash jobs that don't pay very well and are often exploited by their employers or family. Life as an illegal immigrant in Canada is hard, but many people come here because they have no other choice. They're hoping for a better life, but the reality is often very much different. What happens to illegal immigrants in Canada? What happens to them as they're caught? They're detained by Canada Border Services. They're given a hearing. They get to determine whether or not they can stay in the country or not. Now, you know what our justice system is doing with the catch and release. I would assume the same is happening with our immigration policies. If the CBSA decides that you do not have a valid claim to stay in Canada, you'll be given a removal order to leave the country within a certain time frame. If you don't leave within that time frame, you'll be deported. But if CBSA decides that your claims to run to Canada are valid, you'll be allowed to stay in Canada and be protected by the country's law. For example, if you're being persecuted in your own country due to your religious beliefs, sexual beliefs, or even social opinion, CBSA will ascertain if sending you back to your country will cause harm to your life. If their investigation shows a positive response, you'll be allowed to stay in Canada. This process is not as easy as it sounds, though. Canada has a rigorous process for screening and admitting refugees and asylum seekers. But the result is always positive for those with valid reasons to come to Canada, whether as a refugee or even an asylum seeker. Seems we're letting everybody in. How to detect an illegal immigrant in Canada? Well, this is a question that's been, on a lot of people's minds lately. It's a tough thing to navigate. But guess what? We're going to fix that. With the recent influx of refugees and migrants to Canada, many people are wondering how to tell if someone is an illegal immigrant. There's a few things to look for that may indicate someone is an illegal immigrant in Canada. If someone's living in Canada without proper documentation, they may be working off the books or not paying taxes. Anyone without a shred of tax evidence could be an illegal immigrant. If a person does not have a Canadian driver's license or health card and is above driving age, the person may be an illegal immigrant. If they're not carrying any identification documents, this is a red flag as well. If they're avoiding contact with authorities or seem to be hiding something, this is a sure sign they may be an illegal immigrant. Of course, many other factors could indicate that someone is in the country illegally, but these are just some of the most common ones. If you have any suspicion that someone may be in Canada illegally, don't hesitate to report them. They've got a tip line now. These people could act strangely in the presence of law enforcement or government officials. However, whether or not the behavior is tied to immigration, you should still report it. Reporting an illegal immigrant in Canada, well, simple. You call a tip line. Been made available and simpler by the Canadian government for citizens and residents. All you do is call the Canadian Border Services Agency at 1-888-502-9060 to report an illegal immigration. That's 1-888-502-9060, CBSA's Border Watch toll-free number. You don't have to be concerned about anyone finding out either about your report. The tip line is thus a report that will be kept confidential. Your identity will be kept private. In addition, you can contact Citizenship and Immigration Canada by submitting a report via email. Your report will remain a secret just like all the others. To make your report better and to help fast-tracking, you need to include specific information while submitting your report. Include the person's name, address, and phone number if you know them. You might also know information about their employment status or schedule at work, maybe family, a birthday, a description of their traits or physical appearance, details that raise doubt in your mind. This will make the investigation easier. How hard is it to cross the border illegally? Well, it's really hard, as I mentioned. There's a lot of Border Patrol agents, and they're constantly on the lookout for people who are trying to cross illegally. It's extremely difficult and dangerous. Desert terrain is harsh and unforgiving, and people often die of cold exposure. If you're trying to cross with a group of people, it's still difficult, but your chances of success are much higher. Even though smuggling organizations have developed sophisticated methods for getting people across the border, it's still a very risky proposition. That being said, there are ways illegal immigrants have successfully crossed borders without getting caught. Many do a lot of research and understand the loopholes in the border security system and sources of ways to exploit these loopholes and how it works most of the time. You should also try to travel during the off-season when fewer people are trying to cross. Crossing the border illegally is a risky proposition, but if you're careful, you can decrease your chances of getting caught. Is illegal immigration a huge problem in Canada? Well, yes, it is. Canada does have an illegal immigration problem, considering the restrictions one must meet before you're allowed into Canada. You may want to think that Canada would be exempted from illegal immigration challenges. In actuality, Canada has struggled with the issue of illegal immigration for decades. With reportedly 20,000 to 500,000 illegal immigrants in Canada every year, the fight to stop illegal immigration in Canada is far from being won. Efforts to end illegal immigration in Canada have been underway for many, many years now, but there's still a long way to go. The Canadian government has put in place various policies and programs to try to stem the flow of illegal immigrants, but they have only had limited success. The main reason why illegal immigration is still a problem is that there are simply too many ways for people to get into the country. The long and often dangerous journey across the border is a deterrent for some, but others are willing to take the risk. And as long as there are people who are willing to take the risk, illegal immigration will continue to be a problem. The only way to truly solve the problem of illegal immigration is to make it impossible for people to get into the country in the first place. This would require a complete redesign of the border. They need to increase security at the borders, make it harder for people to cross the border illegally, work with other countries to stop people from leaving their homes in the first place. These are just a few ideas, but we want to stop illegal immigration. We need to be willing to put in the effort. In the end, there are a lot of myths and misconceptions out there about what happens to illegal immigrants in Canada. So if you're in Canada without proper documentation, you will not be arrested or charged with a crime. Instead, you'll be detained by Canada Border Services Agency and given a fair hearing to determine if you can stay in the country or not. If your claims are not valid, you'll be asked to leave the country, but if they are valid, you will stay in Canada. The USA has ICE while Canada lets Third World in. Absolutely unbelievable. Thanks for watching Wake Up Canada News. Please like, share, and follow us on any of your favorite socials, including Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, X, BitChute, and our website at wakeupcanadanews.com. Till next time, remember you're the voice, and it's time to make it count. I'm Brad Wilder, and I'll see you soon.